All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Corte Madera and Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin, Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Well, is Brock Purdy going to be the starting quarterback? We don't know, but there is now a Brock Purdy rule in the NFL. That's right. The NFL approves the Brock Purdy rule, allowing a third quarterback to be active without burning a roster spot. And, this goes back to the Niners playoff game against the Eagles when Purdy was knocked out. The Niners had to go to Josh Johnson. They had no other quarterback available. And I guarantee you that the ratings for quarters 2, 3, and 4 of the NFC title game were not as good as they should have been, and the league lost money. And that's what the league cares about most is money. And if they lose money, they're going to make changes. They lost money, they're going to make changes. And today they officially did. Now, towards the end of the month of February, the competition committee, the NFL has their competition committee, and they had discussions and they altered this third quarterback rule. And the goal was to allow teams to have an emergency QB in uniform on game day in the event of a worst case scenario where both starting quarterbacks were somehow injured. And so that was on today, the NFL passed what we're calling now the Brock Purdy rule, which allows a third quarterback to be active, but to be active without burning a roster spot. And that's really the rub. Now, this is great news for the NFL. The bottom line is the quarterbacks are integral to the viewing popularity of an event. You can't just stop. You know what? We ran out of quarterbacks. We'll just plug in our running back and that will be fine. No, it won't be fine. You'll lose the game. The game will be boring. Nobody will watch and people will tune out. So it's obviously for extreme examples. For the Niners, that means, let's just say, for the sake of discussion, that Brock Purdy and Trey Lance wind up being your 1 and your 2 quarterback. Well, now they can have Sam Darnold active on game day without taking that roster spot away from anybody else. So, you can only have so many guys up on game day, and you can only have depth in so many spots. And a lot of times you want that depth on the line. You want an extra defensive lineman. You want an extra offensive lineman. Why? Because those guys go down in the middle of the game, and it's not that uncommon. And you want to make sure you have some backups there. So now you've got an ability to have that third quarterback plug in if your 2 top guys go down. And I think this is definitely an improvement for the league. So there's a lot of uncertainty at quarterback for the Niners this year. There's been a ton of uncertainty for the 49ers at quarterback through the years. And so now, you got Kyle Shanahan has the ability to have 3 quarterbacks available each and every Sunday. Now, according to the rule, the third quarterback is only eligible to play if the first 2 are actually injured. So if your quarterbacks are not injured, it's not like, you know what? This guy's not going good. That guy's not going good. Let's go to our third guy. No. The first 2 guys actually literally have to be hurt. And that's it. If those 2 guys are hurt, then there's a third quarterback. He's dressed, he's there on the sideline, and he can be thrown into the game at that point. Overall, this is a huge win for the league. In some ways, as time goes on, all these little loopholes that make the league, worse get ironed out in little examples like this where, we all wanted to see Niners Eagles in the worst way. It was going to be the game of the year in the NFL, definitely the game of the year in the NFC, and it was going to decide who went to the Super Bowl. And what happened? Brock Purdy gets knocked out on the 6th play, and they're going to, their next quarterback, their third quarterback in this case, Josh Johnson, who's actually technically their 4th quarterback, because let's say Trey was their 1, Jimmy was their 2, Brock was their 3, Josh Johnson was their 4th quarterback they'd used that year. But essentially he was their 3rd because Jimmy was already done for the year Trey was already done for the year at that point, and Jimmy was not active that day. So the Niners went into that game with two quarterbacks. They lose Brock, have to go to their backup, who really wasn't ready to play. He then gets knocked out, and they're using Christian McCaffrey. Suddenly McCaffrey's switching helmets and trying to get a helmet so he can hear the plays called from the booth. And I mean, it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. And the 49ers offense imploded. They couldn't score at all. The game was essentially over. It turned out to be one of the worst games I've ever seen, just simply because the game was over literally 3 quarters before it actually was over. I mean, you think about in the NFL, there's always a point, seems like in the NFL, not always, but most times, where the game is still going as far as the game's not over, but essentially it's over because one team has clinched the victory. And usually there's a couple kneel downs, and that's it. You kneel down a couple times and the game officially is over. And so there's very little what we would call wasted time. In the NFC Championship game, Purdy went out on the 6th play. Josh Johnson went out early on too. And the 49ers basically had to play, almost 3 quarters of that game with no quarterback at all and with no chance to win. And I guarantee you, now I stayed with the game, and I know all of you did as well, because we're Niner fans, we're Niner, supporters, Niner media. It was the playoffs. It was the NFC Championship game. Where else were we going? We were all in. We were dedicated to watch it. But what if you're just some casual observer in Los Angeles or New York or Philadelphia, or not Philadelphia because they were in the game, but some neutral observer, which is most people, and you saw that game and you tuned in, you're like, oh, the Eagles have a lead. The Niners quarterback's out. The Niners don't even have it. They can't even run plays. They can't throw the ball at all. It's game over. Why am I watching this? Let me get on with the rest of my Sunday afternoon. And enough people did that where the league set up and said, you know what? This isn't good. We need to protect our money. We need to protect our money-making ability in some of the biggest games of the year, and this is how we'll do it. We'll allow every team to have that third quarterback available each Sunday, and if the first 2 guys go down, no team will have to play with their backup fullback or their backup running back or some wide receiver who's switching helmets to make this, go. We'll give them the opportunity to have a third quarterback active, and it won't impact the rest of your roster that day. So, every course, 1 hour and 30 minutes prior to kickoff, each club's required to establish a 45-player active list for the game by notifying the referee of the players on the inactive list for that game. Each club may also designate one emergency third quarterback from its 53-man roster, active, inactive list, and who will be eligible to be activated during the game if the club's first 2 quarterbacks on game day active list are not able to participate in the game due to injury or disqualification. So there you go. If you want to have that third quarterback rule, now you have it. And so, there have been a lot of teams that this is going to be interesting because it's, a lot of teams have gone with 2 quarterbacks out of camp, try to use that roster spot on a different position. Now I think you're going to see more teams go with 3 quarterbacks because you've got this rule to give yourself an extra body on game day and an extra quarterback in case the first 2 guys get hurt. So you're going to see more teams carrying 3 quarterbacks, and you're going to see most likely, Brock's your 1, Trey's your 1, Brock's your 2, Trey's your 2. One of those guys will probably be 1 or 2, and now Sam Darnold will be there on game day. And if somehow Brock's hurt, somehow Trey's hurt, and you got to go to Sam Darnold, boom, you can put him in there. And I think this is an advancement for the league. But let's not pretend that the league cares about the product, because to me, it's all about their money. They saw the TV sets coast to coast being turned off, and they're like, no, oh God, no, we cannot have these TV sets turned off. We cannot lose revenue. And so today's move is not about the quality of anything. It's just about how do we protect our revenue, because our studies show if the quarterback's not in the game and we've got to go to some backup wide receiver, that nobody's going to really buy that it's a competitive football game anymore, and they're going to turn off the game in droves. Can't have that. So today's rule is to make sure that doesn't happen. The NFL will do a lot of things, but protecting their cash is absolutely priority number one. All right, hope you enjoyed the 49er video. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krueger Show. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. And thanks to all of you for supporting the Krueger Show on YouTube.